What is going on, everyone? It's John with Midrange TCG, and oh my god, we got another spoiler for Guilds of Ravnica. Now, this card is called March of the Multitudes, and it's an X green white instant speed spell that says Convoke. Create X 1/1 white soldier tokens with lifelink. Now, first off, I understand what you're thinking. Goblin Chain Whirler, oh my god, this card's not that great because Goblin Chain Whirler will just wipe it out. Let me prove you wrong. So first off, what we want to do is we want to look into the current cards in standard right now, minus the ones that are rotating. So obviously we want to look at M19, we want to look at Corset, we want to look at Dominaria, and we want to look at Ixalan. So right off the bat, we got to get rid of a couple of these, but you look at Ajani, pretty good. Obviously, you can make your creatures 2/2s. You also have Aerial Knight of Windgrace. I'm sorry, actually no, Aerial's not that great. We're looking mostly for soldiers here. So I believe I put in the oh, it just says token, doesn't say soldiers. But I mean, if you really want to look at like soldiers, we have cards like, let's look here. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through this really quickly because I saw this and I'm just like, oh my god, this is insane. So cards like Legion's Landing, you know, something that helps you make another token, right? If you're able to transform it, it's pretty awesome. Also, Lena, Selfless Champion, when she enters the battlefield, make 1/1 white soldier creature tokens for each non-token creature you control. Pretty good. So obviously not a bad card. We're also looking at like cards like Leoden War Leader, which just make creatures. So what you want to do is you want to sort of abuse the Convoke ability. So through that, what we want to do is you want to be able to play creatures that can sort of play around vigilance, and usually that revolves around cards like Radiant Destiny, which is a 3-mana enchantment that says give all your creatures of a specific type +1/+1, and on top of that, when you control 10 or more permanents, they gain vigilance. That's insane because what you can do is you can swing, tap, Convoke, play that card, or play this card, March of the Multitudes, and just go off. So we have cards like Leonin War Leader. We've got cards like, Mavrin Fane, which just make a bunch of vampires. So what you can do is you can make a bunch of vampires, tap those vampires to make to Convoke, and then just use the Convoke ability to just make more guys. And what you do is essentially you flood the board and you make all these giant creatures. And then eventually you can play cards like Huatli. So if we want to look it up, Huatli Radiant Destiny. So if you look at like Radiant Champion. Huatli Radiant Champion right here. This card says put a loyalty counter on Huatli. Jesus. For each creature you control, and then target X creature gets +X/+X till the end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So just her +1 ability, while having like 5 or 6 cards on the field, instantly puts her to 9. So what you can do is next turn you can immediately ult, or you can just give it creature +X/+X and just sort of play around cards that have trample, or play around abilities that just sort of have evasion. So an example, you have like first strikers, or you have like double strikers, so stuff like that. And I think Huatli is just an insane card. There's a lot of implications for her in standard. You could also play her along with like Resplendent Angel. Excuse me, not Huatli, but you can play March of the Multitudes along with Resplendent Angel. It also lets you play into like cards like Surgeon at Arms. So these actually make soldiers. Obviously, it's going to be 6 mana, so it's a 6 mana 2/3, but also makes 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens when it enters the battlefield, which is not bad. But I mean, if you want cheap cards that sort of just make creatures, we can't look at Exurgo Exhibition, but we can look at green. So right here, this is just about the end of any sort of cards that have white in it that also make tokens, But a lot of these are also just from Amonkhet, Kaladesh, which are rotating. So we've got to look into green. So in green, we've got cards like Druid of the Horn. So Druid of the Horn is an enchantment deck that can actually make 3/3 beast creature tokens. Obviously, you want to sort of abuse that ability. You can also play Fungal Plots, which says 2 mana, exile a creature from a graveyard and make a Saproling, right? That's awesome because what you can do is essentially you can use this as a mana dump and just sort of dump all your creatures or exile your creatures from your graveyard to make more creatures, and that just sort of feels itself, right? And then just sometimes having a mana sink in your deck is pretty good. So Fungal Plots is pretty good. I was also looking into cards like Polyraptor, could potentially be good. Obviously, it's much more late game, but if we're looking at regular cards, I think Sapling Migration is a very good card. Slimefoot is also pretty good, so you could potentially play this in like a green-black-white deck. You could play this in like a white-green deck with Sapling Migrations and Spore Swarms. So these are just sort of like cards that enable you to make more creatures, and then you can play something like a Song of Freylise. Like Tendershoot Dryad's also even good, right? Tendershoot Dryad every turn, every upkeep it makes a 1/1 sapling token. Which, by the way, this card is instant speed, right? If you look at it, it's an instant speed spell. So I think including Tendershoot Dryad in the deck would be pretty good, right? Just having sort of like a boss creature that makes a multitude of 1/1s that eventually become 3/3s, and then being able to play, March of the Multitudes and just make more soldier tokens and sort of go so wide that your opponent can't block all of them. It's pretty good. So I think that's kind of where we want to go. Definitely in white green. So I think this card's pretty insane. Obviously it's a mythic. I don't think it's going to be like a deal breaker, and I don't think it's going to push green white over the edge, but I think definitely playing this card with Huatli can potentially be a very big sort of like turn advantage, right? You imagine if you have like a Huatli on the field, and then like the previous turn you +1 and you got her to 9, and then the following turn after you got an emblem, and then suddenly play March of the Multitudes, and you make like 5 or 6 soldiers, and then these 5 or 6 soldiers then enable you to play more cards, because Huatli will draw you a card for every single creature that enters the battlefield, right? Look again at her ultimate. She says you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. That's pretty insane, right? If you really want to consider it, that's pretty insane. The fact that she gets to draw out all of your cards, so you have pretty much you get to out resource your opponent, right? You win the attrition game, and on top of that, you just get to sort of abuse the ability of Huatli's ultimate, which is absolutely insane, right? You just go turn 1, an example, you play like a Llanowar Elf. Turn 2, you play a Sapling Migration. Turn 3, you can play Spore Swarm because you have the Llanowar Elf to help you tap for that additional mana. So on turn 3, you're looking at 5 creatures on the board. Okay, so 3 from the Sapling Swarms, and then 3 from the Spore Swarm, and then 2 from the Sapling Migration. Then you go turn 4, play another creature, tap all of them, right? You tap all of them with Song of Freylise. You want to play Song of Freylise on like turn 4, and then what you can do is you can tap all your creatures to make more mana. So what you can do is you can play a kicker version of another Spore Swarm, and then turn 5, what you can do, or you can tap all of them, play a kicker version of Spore Swarm, or play a Huatli, Uptick Huatli, get all your your bonuses, maybe leave up like 1 blocker, and then by the time you hit turn 6, you just ultimate Huatli, and then immediately same time you can tap all your creatures, make a bunch of soldiers, and then by the time turn 7 rolls around, you have a Song of Freylise +1/+1 on your board. All your creatures get indestructible and trample, I believe. Song of Freylise, I believe it says, yeah, all your creatures get indestructible, vigilance, trample till the end of turn. That's insane, and all creatures you control, right? That's I think the greatest part is the fact that you can just kind of combo this out. Right, turn 1 Spore Swarm, turn 1 Llanowar Elf, turn 2 Spore Swarm, turn 2 Sapling Migration, turn 3 Spore Swarm. So you got 6 creatures on the field. Turn 4, tap some of your Saprolings, play a Song of Freylise, tap some more of your mana, right? You get to add a mana of any color. You get to play Huatli on the same turn. That's absolutely insane, because you have 6 creatures plus your Song of Freylise. Plus your 2 or 3 mana that you played. That's 9 mana you have available. And playing a Huatli on turn 3 is not hard, or turn 4 is not hard, right? Also, being able to play on turn 4, being able to play an emblemed Huatli, and then being able to slam this card, March of the Multitudes, is actually pretty insane. There's very few cards that can actually deal with this, right? Even if you look at it as, oh, you know what, like, my opponent will Goblin Chainwhirler me. Sure, but that means they have to have the Goblin Chainwhirler, otherwise you're just going off. And I think that's going to be a really aggressive deck to play. We could also look at cards like Legion's Landing as a turn 1 supplement instead, but I think Llanowar Elves is still where we want to be, just because Llanowar gives you that extra push of mana that you actually do need. So the fact that you just go turn 1, play land, play Llanowar, turn 2, play a land, turn 2, play a land, you play Song of Freylise, turn 3, you get your second trigger of Song of Freylise, you play Spore Swarm, I believe, oh no, you can't tap it, but I guess you would go like turn 2, maybe like you go turn 1 Llanowar, turn 2 Sapling Migration, turn 3 Spore Swarm. So now you have 6 creatures on the field. And then on turn 4 you go play Song of Freylise, you tap 2 creatures, so you've got your 3 mana plus your 6 creatures, you tap 2. So you're at 9 mana, you go down to 7, and then you play Huatli, uptick her, and then the following turn you downtick for your ultimate, you play March of the Multitudes. And I think that's kind of where you do want to be. And what it essentially does is it means by the time your Song of Freylise, if you can get a Song of Freylise, sort of in there with a Huatli at the same time, then the next turn, when you play the March of Multitudes, you can tap even more mana, right? And you can play a second copy of March of Multitudes, which is absolutely insane. And you'll have somewhere along the lines of, I don't know, 11, 12 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink, along with a couple Saprolings. That's absolutely nuts. And then by the time the third trigger of Song of Freylise resolves, you have a board full of 2/2 vigilance indestructible trample tokens. And I think that's absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Especially because if Huatli survives, right? If you're uptaking her, so she starts, I believe she starts at 4. She starts at 3. So she goes to 4, and then if you have 6 creatures with the Spore Swarm, the 3 Spore Swarm, plus the 2 Saprolings, plus the 1 Llanowar Elf, you're looking at plus 7 loyalty. Because the 6 creatures plus 1 plus 3, she's at 10, right? Then you just downtake for the ultimate, and then after that you just -1, so she goes to 1. She goes to 1. One of your creatures probably becomes like a 13/13 trample vigilance, indestructible, and your opponent just sort of has to answer it. And if they don't, you essentially get away with so much free damage. And I think that's the insane part about March of the Multitude, is that the convoke ability lets you tap for the extra green white mana, so you're not actually limited to having to play, your Shocklands or having to play your your Sun Petal Groves, right? Like, you're not forced to do that. You can essentially just go, okay, I'm gonna just dump my entire hand, make a bunch of cards, right? Huatli gets to ultimate. When my creatures enter the battlefield, I draw a brand new hand. I have a board full of threats, and I can just sort of, beat you down super quickly with a Huatli -1, right? And I think that's where you want to go. So, March of the Multitudes, I think it's definitely a good card. I don't think it'll push green-white over the edge, just because there's a lot of cards that can sort of counter it. You do have cards like Goblin Chain Ruler, of course, in the meta. You do have cards like Negate. You do have cards like Disallow for now, but I believe we're getting the new counter spell. I don't remember what it was called, but we do have that new counter spell coming out that also has like Surveil 1 counter target spell. But I mean, if you're playing green, white, you kind of do have to play a bit more smarter. But I mean, sometimes it's just, do you have the counterspell? If not, I guess I win the game. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about March of the Multitudes. Once again, my name is John with Midrange TCG. If you do like my content, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.